Some prisoners don't break out of prison. They are just trusted. And then they walk away. That is what today's episode is about. Not the dramatic prison escapes, not someone hiding under a delivery van, not someone getting over a wall in a high security jail. No, we're talking about something quieter. Something that sounds way less dramatic, but actually exposes something even more uncomfortable. Because a normal prison escape asks, well, how did they get out past security? But an abscond asks, who decided that they were safe enough to be there in the first place? So before I break this down properly, comment now. Should open prisons exist at all? Yes, no, or only for certain prisoners? What do you think? I do read the comments and I want to know where people sort of stand before I explain how it actually works. And if you don't know me, hi, I'm Dagna and I'm an ex-prison officer, and this is Inside Out Justice, where I break down what actually happens behind prison headlines, not just what the headlines want you to argue about. And if you like these deeper insider breakdowns, please subscribe, because I'm moving to one longer episode a week so I can give you sort of more DL, more context, and not just a quick headline reaction. And today, we're breaking down absconds. What is an abscond? How is it different from escapes? And how ROTL fits into it? Why Cat D open conditions matter? And why the women's estate is completely different? And the real cases that made the public ask, how was this person even trusted in the first place? But let's start with the bit that headlines usually blur. An escape is what most people imagine. Someone gets out by beating security, a wall, a locked gate, secure vehicle, direct supervision. There's a classic idea of a prison escape, right? But an abscond is different. So to just break it down even easier, escape is where people get past secure custody. Abscond is when they just walk away from open condition. Released on temporary license or ROTL failure is basically when they are allowed out temporarily and they break the rules or fail to return. And this really matters because the people's reaction is completely different. Because if someone breaks out of a secure jail, people ask, how did the prison let that happen? But if someone walks away from open conditions, people ask, why were they even in open conditions? And honestly, that's not even a stupid question, because open conditions are not designed to be fortresses. They are designed to sort of test the trust. And when that trust is placed in somebody in a wrong way, the public has every right to ask that question. But now, let's talk about Cat D prisons. I am going to break down every prison category properly in later episodes. So we've got Cat A, Cat B, Cat C, Cat D. But for today, the simple version is this. In an adult male estate, Cat D means just open conditions. It's the lowest security prison. But listen carefully here. Cat D does not mean harmless. Cat D does not mean someone basically committed a minor offence. It doesn't mean that there is no risk whatsoever. Cat D means the system has assessed that person as suitable to be managed with less physical security. And that is very different because someone in Cat D might have committed a serious offence in the past. And the category is not just about what they did years ago. It's supposed to be about current risk right now. System should be asking, have they shown consistent positive behaviour? Are there any recent concerns around violence, drugs, victims, or any intelligence gathered? Is there a proper release plan? And have they generally earned that trust? Because Cat D should not mean, we just need space somewhere else. It should mean that person has been tested, assessed, and the risk is manageable in open conditions. So that is the theory. But the uncomfortable part is, like I said, Cat D is not harmless. Cat D is just trusted. And when that trust is wrong, absconds become a scandal. So, can you comment now? Did you actually know that people in Cat D could include people who originally committed serious offences? Or did you just think Cat D meant low-level offenders only? Because that misunderstanding is one of the reasons those stories shock people. Open prisons are meant to be controlled step between sort of closed prison and the community. It should be like a resettlement period. Whether people like it or not, most prisoners are coming out one day. So the question is not just how do we keep people locked up? The question is how do we release people without making the public feel less safe? So this is where open conditions sort of come in. Prisoners get more responsibility, more testing, more movement. Sometimes they are able to work. Sometimes they can attend education. Sometimes they get more family contact. Sometimes release preparation. And sometimes that is ROTL, so release on temporary license. And I think with ROTLs, this is where people are really mixing things up, because ROTLs means someone is still a prisoner, but they are out temporarily under licensed conditions. So ROTL doesn't mean they are free. And if they don't come back, or they come back late, or if they go somewhere where they shouldn't be, commit an offence whilst out, or basically, like I said, fail to return, that is a ROTL failure. So to keep this simple, Cat D prisoner walks away from open prison. That would be abscond. But when you've got Cat C prisoner who goes out on ROTL and does not come back, that is a ROTL failure. All three can essentially leave someone unlawfully at large, but they are not the same thing. And yes, ROTLs aren't specifically assigned to Cat Ds. You can get them in Cat Cs too, if the prison offers it and if the prison is eligible and the risk is assessed. So if someone says, well, how can a Cat C prisoner get out on a ROTL? That absolutely can happen, but if they don't return, you would not call that an abscond from open conditions. I would call this a ROTL failure, because Cat C is not open conditions. The women's estate is slightly different again. Women don't really fit neatly into the same A, B, C and D category system as men. There are women's open prisons like Askham Grange and East Sutton Park, but women in other establishments can still access ROTLs if they're individually risk assessed. For example, you'll know Fran from My Lives every Sunday. She was in Send and they had ROTLs there. That doesn't mean that Send is the same as male Cat D open prison. It just means that women can be individually assessed for temporary release. But now let's talk about some real cases. So first, HMP Leyhill. Leyhill is an open prison. In January 2026, so very, very recently, Matthew Armstrong and Daniel Washburn absconded from Leyhill in South Gloucestershire. Then they were later arrested. But this made news because of the offence history. So Armstrong was reported as a convicted murderer. Washburn was recorded as having previous convictions involving violence and false imprisonment. So imagine being a member of a public reading that. Open prison, murder, violence, police appeal for information, and a genuine manhunt. And a robbery allegations linked to the period. You are obviously going to ask, how were they in open conditions? This is not an unreasonable question to be posing, because the public does not see the risk assessments. They do not see the sentence planning. We don't see reports. We only see the outcome. So someone with a very, very serious and violent history was assessed as safe. Someone with a very, very serious history was trusted. And then they were gone. And that is basically why these cases make news. Not because every Cat D placement is wrong, but because when it does go wrong, people want to know who signed it off. And they really should. Then there is Mitchell Chandler at HMP Sudbury. This one is quite useful because it shows exactly why the language confuses people. In May 26, so even more recent case, police appealed for help locate Mitchell, describing him as a prison absconder. They said he climbed over a fence of Sudbury Prison. He was serving a sentence for burglary, drug offences and handling some stolen goods. Now, this is where everyone could be really easily confused because police called him an absconder. But what the public hears is, he climbed over a fence. And we think, well, that's an escape, isn't it? And I fully understand why, but Sudbury is an open prison. Open prison can still have boundaries, they can still have fences, but they are not designed like closed prisons. They are not meant to hold people using the same level of sort of physical security. This is where that language really matters, because the headlines might sound like it's a major breakout, but operationally, the bigger question is still, why was he in there? And if Sudbury already showed you the language problem, Kirk Levington Grange shows the trust problem. In May 2026, police appealed for information after John Laidlaw absconded from Kirk Levington Grange prison. He had been convicted of 3 attempted murders. And this is exactly the case that makes people panic, because we hear 3 attempted murders, he was in open conditions, but then police is appealing for information, do not approach, and the reaction is obvious. Are we testing people safely or trusting people a little bit too soon? And that is the key question, because I'm not saying someone who committed a very serious offence can never progress. Serious prisoners can absolutely progress, and they do so. That is how long sentences work. Someone can start in close conditions and later move down if they show sustained progress. And that is not automatically wrong, but it needs to be earned, not assumed or rushed or forced just because the prison is full. Now, let's talk about women, because this is not just a male prison issue. Women can abscond too. Women can fail ROTLs too. And it makes news way less often because obviously the women's prison population is much, much smaller. But it does happen. One of the clearest examples is of Jane Andrews. So if you don't know, Jane Andrews was a former aide to Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York. She was jailed for life for murdering her boyfriend, Thomas Cressman. In 2009, she absconded from East Sutton Park, a women's open prison. And why did that make news? Because he had everything. A high profile woman, royal connections, a murder conviction, and open prison. Then public manhunt and public shock. The case was even raised in Parliament. And that tells you how quickly an abscond can move from an operational prison incident to quite a political issue. One person just walked away, and suddenly the whole system is being asked, well, how did it happen? And again, the public reaction was not just, oh, well, she left. It was, how was someone serving life for murder in a place where leaving was possible? That is why absconds hit different. They're not always dramatic in a physical sense, but they can be quite explosive politically because they expose that trust. They expose judgment. They expose the decisions behind the prison system that the public never normally see. Now, I really want to be fair because open prisons are not just automatically bad. ROTL is not automatically reckless. There are people who use open condition exactly as needed. They go to work, they come back, they rebuild family links, they prepare for release, they prove they can follow rules, they reduce their risk. And if we never test people before release, we will create a different kind of danger. Because releasing someone straight from close conditions after years inside with no gradual testing, no work routine, no family rebuilding, no proof that they can actually manage that responsibility is not exactly automatically safer. It just delays the risk until release day. So when people say, just shut open prisons, I understand that anger and frustration, but that is not public protection plan. A real public protection plan is this: use open conditions properly, use ROTL properly, assess people accurately, listen to the victims, listen to the intelligence gathered, listen to your frontline staff. Do not move people too soon. Don't use open prisons as a pressure valve on closed conditions. Don't pretend paperwork equals safety, because paperwork doesn't protect the public. Good judgment does. And I think all those cases sort of create backlash against prisoners who might generally be suitable for gradual reintegration. This is why all these failures matter, even when the numbers are quite small, because numbers will not comfort victims. Statistics do not reassure anybody when police are saying, do not approach. Percentages won't matter to a victim who has just been told person who harmed them is missing. So yes, context matters, Most ROTLs don't fail. Most people in open conditions do not abscond, but the failures still matter, and the public are allowed to ask why. So, next time you see a headline saying, "A prisoner has escaped," ask better questions. Did they physically escape from a secure custody? Or did they abscond from open conditions? What was their offence? What was the recent behaviour? And who approved the move? Were victims considered? What were the warning signs? And was this a proper progression move? Or just moving them to open conditions because the closed conditions were too full? Because that is your real story, not a flashy headline. So, to sum it up, prison escape asks, how did they get past security? An abscond asks, why were they trusted beyond it? A ROTL failure asks, why did the temporary release plan fail? 3 different failures, 3 different questions, but one shared consequence. The public are left asking whether the prison system is actually in control. And that is why those absconds matter. They are not cinematic, they are not always dramatic. They will probably never get the same attention as someone escaping under a van. But in some ways, they expose something even more uncomfortable because a wall can be repaired, a gate can be reinforced, a van can be searched better, procedures can be tightened. But judgment, risk assessment, trust, that's way harder to fix. So, no, my answer is not shut every open prison. And no, I'm not saying trust everyone because rehabilitation sounds so nice. My answer is use open conditions for the right people. Use ROTLs for the right people. Don't move people too soon and don't ignore warning signs. And most importantly, do not expect victims or the public to accept vague explanation when someone serious go missing. Because Cat D is not harmless. It's trusted. ROTL is not freedom. It's temporary trust. So, if you did comment at the start, let me know now. Has your view changed? Do you think open prisons and ROTLs are necessary for sort of safer release and safer rehabilitation? Or do you think the system is trusting some prisoners far too soon? So in the next episode, I'll be taking something yet completely different, accidental prison releases, because that is just a failure on a completely different scale. So if you want more inside breakdowns like this, please subscribe to Inside Out Justice and share this with someone who thinks every prisoner escape is the same thing. I'll see you in the next one.